welcome to Redefining Musical Standards for the AC brand. Now, how many of you in this room are game developers? Raise your hand. All right, so quite a few. So you guys know as well as I do that making a game involves intense teamwork. Imagine yourself on the dream team. Imagine that you're getting just the right amount of feedback and information, and that people on the floor seem to trust your decisions. Well, that was pretty much the case Jerome and I were on at the beginning of the production on AC3. And that gave us wings. It allowed us to do as we truly believed, which mainly revolves around this one idea, that music should be carefully tailored to this one brand and one game that you're working on. So let's refresh our memories and look at some AC music history. On AC1, Jesper Kyd establishes the style. It's medieval, it's Middle Eastern, it is unique, and it greatly contributes into making the brand. On AC2, Jesper writes the piece Ezio's Family that gets adopted by the fans as the AC theme. On AC Brotherhood, Jesper further explores ways of portraying the hidden wars of the Italian Renaissance. On AC Revelations, Lauren Balfe gets on board and writes a new theme inspired by Ezio's Family. So it's pretty undeniable that we have this solid music identity. But every new core team have their own vision, and it's crucial when planning music to take both into account, the history and the new vision. So I will let Jerome tell you about our new mandate.
Thank you, Benedicte. Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. Assassin's Creed 3 is the fifth installment of the franchise, and it's the first one since Assassin's Creed 2 to introduce a new main character. We leave behind the tales of the beloved Ezio and Altair, and we meet Connor, an half-British, half-Native American character born on the verge of the American Revolution. When we start working on the project, we met with the creative team, and they challenged us to come with something fresh for this new beginning. Since Jesper Kyd music was so perfectly tied with the Ezio saga, it was time for a new approach, a new sound for the score. But we have to stay true to the brand. So, what are the pillars of the brand? History is our playground. The attention to detail, a strong storytelling and characters, the mythological background, open world action stealth, vast environment, free running, and diverse combat situations. History is our playground. Actually, I will say it's the motto of the creative team in Assassin's Creed. It's something that the team handle with great care because the game are fiction taking place during historical events. And we have historical advisor working with us. In November 2011, Lauren Balfe came at Montreal studio, visit us, and we brainstormed with the creative team during 2 days. A couple of days later, he sent us the first piece of music. It was the father and son theme, and we knew right away he has captured the Assassin's Creed spirit. follow back and forth, brainstorming and discussion about the instrumentation to make the fantasy come real. For example, when the theme is played for A-tab, we use harpsichord and English horn to highlight his British side. The same template for Connor use flute and no drums to highlight his Native American heritage. The homestead in the game was the perfect opportunity to diversify the music. Essentially, the homestead is a small village with a highly organic and traditional colonial feel. So we decided to use traditional instruments in the music with small ensemble. You know what? I always felt that something was missing in the Assassin's Creed music. We have this beautiful score that works perfectly with each game, but we didn't put a lot of emphasis on the historical value of the music. So for this game, I really wanted to have what we call source music inside. I started doing a lot of research about the music of the 18th century to find what kind of instruments were played and the song of the American Revolution. To help us, we welcome on board David Gossage, the guy on the left, a professor in the McGill University as a traditional music producer. He and his band will record for us 30 minutes of music that will be used inside the tavern and 15 minutes of sea shanties. Finding music for the time period is a real headache because it's difficult to track, record an exact date. And in one of the sea shanty, Holloway Joe, that was supposed to be written during the life of Atam, the first character you can play in the game. After the recording, we discovered there were references about the French Revolution, and that's bad for us. So we have to edit it and remove that part. The small clip I will play for you is a session recording from Road to Boston, a song that was written by the revolutionary camp. Another pillar of the franchise are the environment. Before Assassin's Creed 3, there were mainly cities. In Assassin's Creed 3, we welcomed two new environments, the wilderness with the frontier and the sea with the naval warfare. Very early, when we start talking with Lorne, we really try to find a way to diversify the music in the game. So the environment were a good choice to do that. Each environment has its own music style, its own kind of instrument, its own melody, and every gameplay music in that environment is written according to that. For example, in the city, we use bell, dulcimer, flute, and fiddle. For Frontier, because we really wanted to have a more Native American influence in the music, we use voices, flute, and low percussion. Naval Warfare was the perfect opportunity to introduce long and epic melody played by big orchestra. For the homestead, this is traditional instrument. In small ensemble, the music is more positive because in the homestead, it's always sunny and you have to feel welcome. At last, the present in the game. We try to blend modern elements with the orchestra. So we have different music for each environment. In the next example, I will show you how we blend seamlessly from inside the gameplay, from, for example, the navigation music in Boston to the action music.
Master Kenway! Master Kenway!
Yes, may I help you?
Charles Lee, sir. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. I've been asked to introduce you to the city, help you settle it. Oh, no need, sir. I've arranged for your bags to be delivered to the...
Thief! Someone stop him!
So this is the navigation music for the cities.
Boston's quite a lively city.
There's all manner of things to see and do. Once you've settled in, I suggest you take some...
And we blend to the action part of the music. So we discussed about two of the pillars in Assassin's Creed. The next one, attention to detail. Benedicte will explain to you how we work on that.
Thank you, Jerome. Yes, so attention to details is certainly one of the brand characteristics. And I think the next two stories will help to show to which extent we were ready to go to be realistic. Now, for those of you who haven't played the game, the first mission starts during a representation of the Beggar's opera. which is a Baroque opera that could have been playing in London at the time of the game. I have to admit, when I first heard of this idea, I thought for sure it was going to be quickly abandoned when people realized just how complex and eccentric this would be. And, well, surprisingly enough, the idea survived, thankfully. And so my first task was to find a recording of the piece that was faithful to how it would have been played back in the days, back at the time of the game. This opera was rearranged in the 1940s by Benjamin Britten, and there are lots of versions of it with operatic voices, full modern orchestras, and even the lyrics were modernized. But what we needed was a small Baroque orchestra and voices interpretation that's closer to a musical than a modern opera. We did find some recordings, but they were not available for licensing. We couldn't pay to use them in the game. So we ended up having to re-record 15 minutes of the Beggar's opera. It turns out, thankfully, that Montreal is a very happening place for early music. There is a university program. There are several record labels who specialize in early music. And several players on our recording have international careers as Baroque musicians. So on the music production side of things, I was finding all the help I could dream for. But on the integration side of things, there was literally tons of details that we needed to figure out. Assassin's Creed being a game where you could stab just about anyone you want, I was kind of worried that the player would be able to walk up on stage and stab a singer. Because that would have been a technical nightmare. Fortunately, it wasn't the case. We were to stay a good 15 meters away from the stage. We had to figure out which parts of the opera we could loop, because, it's a video game. The player is free to explore, but the show must go on. So we found out that the most unnoticeable spots were the dialogue in between the arias. And sonically, if you walk into a room and there's a show playing, it's very different than listening to a static stereo recording. For example, if you walk from one side of the room to the other, then wouldn't the singers be panned differently than the orchestra? And then if you go backstage, then the voices are going to be muffled, but louder than the orchestra compared to when being up front. So in order to do these little play on perspectives, we use close miking on our singers. You can see Charlotte is wearing a headset, and we mixed and matched with the other microphones, and that worked out quite well. So there was tons of other details. I spare you the details. But slowly but surely, all the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. But the day before the recording, there was still one question nagging at me. Why the Beggar's opera? Is there a reason I'm not aware of? Because they sure seem to want that piece a lot. And indeed there was. This opera was written by an Englishman named John Gay as a parody of Italian operas of the time. And the creative team thought that was funny because our new character, Hatham, is English, and our previous hero, Ezio, was Italian. Har har, yes. So this detail actually came in handy on the day of the recording because the musician's first impulse was to play the piece as any other Baroque piece. And you know how this music can be solemn and elegant and pretty, but that's not why the team had chosen the piece. So we were all under the charm, but I still had to walk up to our internationally acclaimed harpsichordist and conductor, Mr. Alex Ouimet, and say, well, Mr. Ouimet, that was really, really gorgeous, but this piece being a parody, could it be possible to switch the interpretation to something funnier? We don't want pretty, we want funny. So he understood at once. And so please listen to our singer, Charlotte, doing Mrs. Peacham's aria.
Though she be never so ugly, lilies and roses will quickly appear, and her face look wondrous smugly. Beneath a left ear so fit but a cord, a robe so charming as own is. Thy youth in his court hath the air of a lord, and we cry that dies on Adonis.
So it's still pretty, but you can feel the, what was I going to say? Oh, yes. Please listen now to the same piece of music in the game with a little bit of score to add to the drama.
You should have come to me. We would have found another way. Yes. But then you would have known. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. As am I.
Voilà. Oh, yeah. Thank you. So our new hero, Connor, is English from his father, Haytham. I hope I'm not spoiling anything for you. But he's also Mohawk from his mother, Theo. And so, of course, we wanted to have authentic Mohawk music in our game, which turned out to be a little more difficult than you'd think. There is a Mohawk village near Montreal, and our historian, Max, whom you could see with the brown shirt, organized a field trip so that Jerome and I could go and talk to Mr. Thomas Deere in the center about Mohawk music. So Mr. Deere showed us Mohawk musical instruments, which consist solely of rattles made out of turtle shells and a water drum. Apparently the flute isn't very popular. So these instruments are used as accompaniment for songs. Bon. So we asked Mr. Deere, we tell him, we really want to have some of these songs in our game. And he said, I don't think that's a good idea. And yeah, sure, why? And then he said, well, because it's our tradition that Mohawk music is for Mohawk people. Right. Actually, it makes sense. They're a small community that decided to protect their culture by staying private. But you know how when something is forbidden, how you get twice as curious about it? So we started asking tons of questions. And I told Mr. Deere, so what do you think we should do about it? Because the last thing we want to include in our game is some silly native cliche song that goes, hey-ya, hey-ya. And he seemed pretty horrified by that thought. And so we didn't get an answer that day, but we left him with a dilemma. And a few weeks after, I had contact information for a man named Canadogo. And yes, He's the leader of the Mohawk Male Singing Society. And on the phone, I think Kanadogo is about 50 years old. On the day of the recording, we discover he's really 23 years old, and that all the singers in the Male Singing Society are teenagers. Teenagers. First of all, I didn't buy enough pizza. Second of all, I had to ask, do you guys play Assassin's Creed by any chance? Yes, they did. And that helped us quite a bit. So we spent a lovely evening recording happy songs with the names like Trout, Rock, Rabbit, Friendship. And the fact that the songs were happy were perfect for us because Connor's childhood is a happy one. And it made for a great contrast when Connor meets our villain, Mr. Charles Lee, for the first time.
Wish, Yaya, Zada, Sategu, Jostu, Oyerdi, Oskiwarte, Ikniwarte, Oskiwarte, Iriwarte, Wiskiwarte, Yayiwarte, Yayiwarte.
What have we here?
You look familiar. Where have I seen you before?
So for the record, I talked to Kanadogo after the game was out, and they had all played it at school, and they were very happy to hear their language and their songs. So it's a happy end. Another one of the brand's characteristics is strong storytelling. Now, how could we support that with music? One way is to borrow a technique that comes from film scoring that I will call composing with themes. A theme in this context is a small recurring musical melody that's associated with a particular character, place, or idea. And actually, I just told you a definition that's very close to a leitmotif, and leitmotifs were used in opera long before they were used in film scoring. But today we will call leitmotifs themes because most everyone does. So to me, there are 3 golden rules when working with themes. And the first one is that the melody has to be a perfect fit with the person, place, or idea it represents. Now let's play this little quiz with well-known themes. Indiana Jones theme. What can we say about it? I heard epic and joyful. Yes, and you know it's because Indy is a happy-go-lucky guy. And Batman Begins theme is, yes. It is majestic because Batman is very theatrical, and it's gloomy because Mr. Bruce Wayne is depressed and disillusioned. And the AC3 theme is epic and melancholic, because our hero is always caught up in a plot that is bigger than nature and that doesn't have a happy ending. In order to do this, you need to have sufficient information about your brand, your story, and your characters, which in video game is not always obvious. But on AC3, we had that luxury. We knew the brand really well, and the characters were established early in production, and that was very valuable to us. So the second golden rule when composing with themes is repetition. And this I call the moment of truth. How many times do you think you heard the James Bond theme in Dr. No? I want guesses. 7? 20? The answer is 13. And I call this the moment of truth because my own guess was way off. How many times do you think you heard the Star Wars theme in Empire Strikes Back? Oh, good. 18. Oh, that's good. 20 is good. How about Batman Begins? 17. And The Hunger Games? 13. The idea here was to sample movies from different decades to see if anything had changed over time. It seems pretty stable. And by the way, in Empire Strikes Back, you can hear the Imperial March associated with Darth Vader 28 times. Yes, 28 times. I counted them. So no wonder you remember the theme after you watch the movie. How many times did you hear the AC3 theme in AC3? 50 times. 50 times over the span of about 28 hours of gameplay. I think, with retrospect, we were a little shy of repetition, especially when you establish a new melody and you want people to remember it, you can repeat it a lot. But that brings me to my third golden rule of working with themes. It's not just repetition. In order for the theme to support the story, it needs to happen in key moments in the story. Example of a key moment would be when Batman puts on his suit for the first time, when he goes in the Batcave for the first time, when he climbs the mount where he meets Ra's al Ghul. So those are key moments in the story, and for sure you're going to hear the theme in the movie. In the production of AC3, we were getting the cinematics in a mumbo-jumbo random order at the last minute. And I'm sure that's happened to some of you too. And so we discovered that it would have been just impossible for Lorne Balfe, our composer, to make sense of which one of these cinematics were actually key moments in the overall story. So we decided to think about it and specify it in the brief. This is one of my briefs, and you can see that there's a green mention. This is a significant moment. If you use a theme, it'll mean something. And in this case, I'm also specifying the theme would be either Templars or Connor's theme. So how many themes did we use in AC3? We had 4 for characters, 1 for father and son, 1 for Achilles, who is Connor's mentor, 1 for the love story between Haytham and Theo, and 1 for Desmond, our character in the present. We had 4 for the environments. We had the frontier, cities, homestead, which is the same as Achilles' theme, and the naval theme. We also had 3 themes for the main overall plot, 1 for the assassins, for the Templars, and also the ancient civilizations. So 11 melodies to support this great tale. So now we've seen decisions we took about music composition, music style, and orchestration. Now I will let Jerome show you how it all worked out in the game.
Game scoring technical design. It's a barbaric sentence. But to be sure that the music will support the mood and the action, we decide during the mission the music will not rely on systemic condition. All the music was edited like a linear feature and integrated later in the game. The advantage of that method is that we are sure that the music closely follows the action and the music punch at the right moment. The downside of that method is that very time-consuming, and every time a designer decides to change something in the mission, you have to adapt quickly, and you know that they change always something. The second thing we really tried to do in the game was to blur the line between the cutscene music and the gameplay sequence. We did that by letting the gameplay music continue on the secondary cutscene, but also by creating seamless transition between cutscene and gameplay music.
Connor, my friend, you have arrived just in time to bear witness to our glorious victory.
Where is Charles Lee?
That batard. He shows up in the middle of our preparations and just takes charge. Screams at everyone to advance, and the rest. I am left to pick up the pieces. Where did they come from? Send word that we are falling back! Everyone, to me! Now! Now!
I will hold the area while you bring them to safety.
I grant you my finest soldiers to serve as your personal guard. There is nothing they will not do to ensure you are victorious. Bonne chance, mon ami.
In this particular example, the gameplay music starts almost at the end of the cinematic. So when the player starts to play, the music is already there, there is no cut, and I definitely think it's better. The second challenge we faced for this game in the system were the combat music. In the previous game, the combat music was just playing during the combat and stop when the combat finished. In this one, we tried to follow the course of action by creating a system that adapted to the action of the player. In fact, this system was created very, very early in the production phase because I wanted to be ready long before the composer came on board. But we decided not to explain it to the composer because I didn't want him to focus on technicality and lose the creative side. Instead, we have done a lot of video capture that show every key moment we wanted inside the music and send it to him. This is a very early version of the music. And obviously the music works well with the picture, but it was not a fit for the combat. Why? The music is too epic to be repeated every 5 minutes. The melodies were too long and too memorable to be broken in small pieces, and it was not violent enough. In fact, the combat music were the very first one we ordered to learn, and they were the last one to get approved in the process. So we continued to discuss with the composer, to brainstorm about the music, and it was very hard to find the right mood. And the breakthrough came with a first cinematic showing combat. Actually, it was the video we made for the reveal demo last March, I think, showing the combat, the assassination of Pitcairn.
A war we did not wish.
This very small piece of music will become the basis of the frontier combat music. So, how works the system? When the player starts a fight, we have what we call the conflict loop. If nothing happens during 1 or 2 seconds, we have what we call an observation phase. That is basically a small loop without any percussion to wait what will happen in the combat. As soon as the player or the enemy strikes, we count the number of enemies present in the combat, and we will decide what music to play. If there is few enemies, I will say a patrol, we have the normal combat loop. If there is more than one patrol, we have a more epic cue playing. And if there is only one enemy, it's a more percussive melody playing. During the combat, as soon as there is only one enemy left, we have what we call the break part that stops all the percussion and wait for the player or the enemy to take advantage. And after that, we go back to the 1 versus 1. All these parts can transition seamlessly to each other because of the Wise engine. And of course, when everyone is dead, we play the end part. But we have also, in the conflict loop, what we call the chase and the hiding phase. So if the player decides to flee the combat, we have to play a specific part of the music that could be played at any time. If I manage to escape, we finish this music, but he can choose to hide from the enemy. So in this capture, you will see exactly what was on the schematic view. This is during the Bunker Hill mission. Combat start. The music transition to the epic part of the music because another patrol is coming. Back to the normal part of the music. Only one enemy left, the break part, and the music will start when he strikes. And everyone is dead. By associating specific melody with the specific environment and using variation of them in the gameplay music, Lorne created fresh systematic cue with the flavor of Hollywood. Because we are there so closely to the brand identity by tailoring the music to each aspect of it, I believe we produce a score that is unique with this game.
And did we redefine the musical standards of the AC brand? In a sense, yes. because we proposed new ideas, we broke the mold, and we produced a score that is quite different from the previous ones. But the video game world is so full of creative people and exciting surprises that for sure the next game is going to be just as much as a challenging adventure. And that's for the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. If you have any questions, there's a small question period, but you have to step up to the microphone, please.
Hi, so one of my favorite parts of Assassin's Creed 3 actually was the sea shanties that was on the various harbors and the ships. So I was wondering if you could talk about maybe the process of recording those or just the research that went into the various sea shanties.
The research? Actually, it was Google it. Going to the library and hopefully David Gossage, our producer for the music, really helped us with that because it was a nightmare. It's really hard to track this kind of thing. And we spot some song that we really want to be there, and we did a lot of research to be sure that they were written at the exact time. But obviously, we have some problem in the middle, and we have some anachronism.
Thanks.
Hi, I was wondering, how many composers were there working on Assassin's Creed? Was it only one?
It's Lauren Balfe.
Okay. And so, how hard was it to actually find someone who could have different themes, understanding all these moods? Is it just his pure talent, or did you have to go through a lot of iterations to get it right?
Actually, I'll answer that one. Getting the themes was not the hard part because Lauren's main experience is in linear media. It's in movies. So it came pretty naturally to him, and he's pretty talented at doing it. We had much more trouble making him write gameplay music, actually.
Good, thanks.
You're welcome.
Hello. I just wanted to know if there are some soundtracks from movies that did influence you. For example, playing Assassin's Creed 3, I had the sensation to hear something from Inception, the soundtrack. I just wanted to know if this is true. I mean, if it did influence or not. And anyway, if you did take the inspiration from something from movies. From movies, from the cinema. I mean, is there any soundtrack from any movie you just mentioned before, other movies, when you made your, speech? And I just wanted to know if, when creating the soundtrack of Assassin's Creed 3, you've been influenced from some main themes from other soundtracks in movies.
No, we didn't use any references. If I understand your question. We wanted to learn to find his way and his own music to appropriate it, to appropriate himself the game. So we just give him what we will call mood reference, because sometimes it's harder for a movie composer to get some mood in a video game.
Hi. My question's about the combat music.
Yeah.
So that system that you guys had designed seems like an ideal combat music system. It's sort of like the dream come true. And watching, at least for me, and watching the video seemed like it was implemented fairly seamlessly. So I'm curious about the pieces. Was the kind of one-on-one and light and heavy combat, is that just one multi-channel streaming file? And then I see you're shaking your head no, but I'll finish my question before I get the answer. The rest of the pieces, like the observation and the chase, is that all loaded into memory, just kind of waiting?
It's all streaming.
Okay.
And for the combat, we had only 2 tracks playing at the same time. The second track was, I will say, something to stress the player when you are low on life. But actually, because of the engine we use, that is Wise, you can transition very easily from one music to another. So when we receive the music from Lorne, we break the music in small parts. We resend in each part to extend them to 1 minute or 1 minute and a half. And we just put that in the system, and the system chooses the part to play very, very, very seamlessly.
I see. And does each chunk have like a fade in and fade out, piece? Because it seems like there's no break. It seems like it's just a
depending on the section, we use a small transition part to go from, for example, the normal combat to the epic melody. And we transition to the beat of the bar, depending of the music part.
Okay. Sorry, I have a lot of questions. Two questions. Is there like a reverb system happening in the hardware to smooth things out, like a DSP thing? What's the sync? Like, what's the clock that you're using to determine, when? How is it checking its back on itself to say, okay, now we need to fade in a new part?
In the Wise engine, you can enter the clock and the signature of each part of the music. So it's basically the system that counts, and when you ask him to transition, he do the job for you.
Okay.
So it's very easy to work with that.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Hi, Benedicte. Hi, Jerome.
Hello.
We'll talk about that later. So my question is the other side of what McLean was asking. He was asking about the music part. My question is, how were you getting information from the game telling you about the game state? Was that something that you had to go to the programming team to send them, or were you able in Wise to go in and set little markers to call out, say, okay, how many combatants do we have right now? Yeah. What's the health? Things like that. Talk to us for a minute about the game state side of this system.
First, you have to be the best friend with your programmer. That's obvious, because you work a lot with him. And actually, we had two separate systems that talk to each other. One in the game engine we use at Ubisoft, that basically is just counting the enemies and choose the right part to play. It's just do that. And in Wise, we use RTPCs that are fed by the game engine to know the health of the character. And each time we receive a different state, we just change the part of the music. So the two systems are constantly talking to each other. And that does the magic.
You said it took a year to have the system perfected?
Yeah. The very early version of the system took us 3 months and a half to build. But because the combat team was always perfecting the combat and changing little bit of thing and behavior in the enemies, sometimes it was a nightmare just to maintain and to have the thing work. But at the end, I'm pretty happy with the result.
Yeah, just a quick question. Sorry to jump ahead a little bit. I know the latest Assassin's Creed has been announced. I'm wondering, A, are you guys involved in that? And B, can you tell us if you're out in the field doing research? I don't know what kind of binding contracts you guys have, but...
For the next game, in fact, it's a different team. It's we have 2 teams working on game. So when this one was finished, the previous team was already working on Black Flag that is supposed to come this year.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Cheers.
Hi. So I had 2 questions. The first has to do with your environment music. So was it all kind of content-driven? And I noticed that you guys did a good job in between kind of different sort of cinematic or content moments in the game, letting the score kind of breathe with silence and letting kind of sound effects come in and fill that space. So I guess the first part of that question is, how much of your environment music was kind of used to fill space without necessarily being content specific, and then how much did you guys work with other kind of teams and content teams to help let the score breathe?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Of course you understood.
Oh.
No, you mean now I'm going to have trouble. But it's pretty much the environment music.
The source music.
It's all mission music. It's
Right.
all.
So how much of it was
the
in
score is mainly played inside a mission because our creative director didn't want to have navigation music like the previous game.
Mm-hmm.
But the what we call the source music is played all the time. So sea shanties or tavern music, as soon as you enter a tavern, if there are musicians, the music is played.
So then in the open world, I mean, I noticed you had a lot of area where it let the score kind of breathe, which was nice. And how much did you work with teams that were working with specific types of content to allow time and space to kind of let that breathe, or was that just kind of a natural, happy accident?
I will not say there was accident because we are closely working together. We are all in the same floor, so we talk to each other all the time. Mm-hmm. But it's clear that the fact that we didn't have navigation music helped a lot to have these beautiful ambiances and sound to go through the game.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks.
Hi. Just a quick question regarding the background, basically kind of the homework you did before any of the composing started, meaning finding the musical foundation aesthetically and also as far as the technical constraints of the game. Was that all laid out before any composing began, or did you refine that as the music was being composed? You would see what worked, what didn't work, or was it all entirely decided beforehand and the composer simply was just executing the vision that you had?
Half and half, I would say.
Yeah.
We always do some research and try other soundtracks from anywhere in the world and see like what works and what doesn't. But on Assassin's Creed, we never find a perfect fit that already exists.
Right.
So we say, well, we like the instrumentation of this soundtrack, but there's no action music on this soundtrack, or blah blah blah. So we'd say we like this about this, and certainly Norn, he came brainstorming with us for 2 days, and we gave him just tons of information on the game, and he had to do a little bit of research, yes, on his own, but this part worked pretty quickly.
I see.
And for us, we have to do also a lot of research before the composer came aboard because we have to sell the idea to the producer and the creative director. So when you have something in mind, a certain type of music, you have to prove that it will work for the game.
All right, great, thanks.
Hey, you mentioned that approximately 28 hours of gameplay. I'm just curious how many minutes of music was actually composed.
3 hours of music for the game. It's 2 hours and 10 minutes of gameplay music and 1 hour on cinematics. And because we had access to all the tracks and the stems, it was easy to create a new part in the music.
And there was additional music for the multiplayer, and the source music must have amounted to a little more than an hour.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I was wondering for the dynamic music for combat, whether you had multiple sets of those to... you understand what I'm saying? Like you had the group of sound of looping combat music that would play at different levels of intensity.
Yeah.
Did you have, and they all work together as a set with transitions and all that. Did you have multiple sets in the game?
We have variation that the system will call randomly. So, for example, inside the normal section of the music, you will have 3 tracks to be sure that the player don't hear every time the same piece of music. And because the gameplay music is different from location to location, so you have a lot of diversity even in the combat situation.
Thank you.
Alrighty, so it looks like we're done. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
And thank you. And don't forget when you leave to fill out the evaluation forms, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you.